It all started about a month ago. My wife Emily and I had been together for almost 10 years. We met in college, got married right after graduation, and for the most part I thought we had a solid, stable life. We didn't have kids yet, but we had a house, decent jobs, and a routine that worked. Or so I thought. The first signs of trouble were small but noticeable. Emily started coming home later than usual, often claiming she was working late or had some errands. I didn't think much of it at first. She's always been a bit of a bitch, sharp-tongued, quick to get annoyed, and very good at hiding her feelings. But I noticed her phone was more guarded than ever. She'd hide it whenever I came into the room, and sometimes I'd catch her deleting messages or changing her passwords. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe she was stressed with work or something. Then came the big thing. I started noticing her behavior around our band's biggest performance. I'm in a band myself, and we had this huge gig coming up. It was a big deal for us. It was supposed to be the night everything changed for our little scene. Emily was supposed to come, but I kept catching her acting weird. She'd ignore my texts, which was unusual because she's usually pretty attentive. She'd be overly interested in the sound check, hanging around backstage more than usual, asking a lot of questions about the sound engineer, a guy named Mark. Mark's a decent guy, I guess. Tall, with a good reputation, and he's been working at the venue for years. But I always had a feeling something was off about him. That night during sound check, Emily kept sneaking glances at him, and I swear I saw her smile at him more than she smiled at me. They exchanged contacts during the sound check. Sure enough, I saw them exchanging numbers when they thought no one was looking. I brushed it off then, telling myself I was just paranoid. After the show, Emily didn't come home right away. I was exhausted but waited up. Around midnight, I decided to check her phone, something I don't do often but felt compelled to do this time. I found a bunch of texts from Mark. They weren't just friendly. There were flirty messages, insinuations, even some explicit stuff about meeting up later or having fun. My stomach sank. I couldn't believe it. The woman I trusted, the woman I shared my life with, was sneaking around with some guy at our biggest gig. That's when I started piecing the whole thing together. The late nights, her weird behavior at the show, the way she looked at Mark, she was cheating. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was that she lied so easily. She's always been a good liar, especially when she's caught lying. But this time I had proof, and it cut like a knife. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat there, staring at her messages, trying to process what I'd just read. I felt this mix of anger and heartbreak. How could she do this to me? After everything we'd been through, I'd always been loyal, always tried to be a good husband, and she was out there screwing some guy she barely knew during my biggest night. It felt like the biggest slap in the face I'd ever experienced. And I knew I couldn't just brush this off, pretend it was nothing. I had to confront her, to find out what her explanation was, if she even had one. The next morning, I knew I couldn't keep this bottled up. My mind kept spinning, replaying everything I'd seen and read. The betrayal hit me hard, but what hurt even more was the idea that she had lied so convincingly for so long. I needed to hear her side, or at least get her to admit what she'd been doing behind my back. I decided I'd confront her that day, no matter how painful it might be. When Emily got home that afternoon, she looked defensive from the start. I could see it in her eyes, that little flicker of guilt she was trying to hide behind her bitchy smirk. I didn't waste time. I just laid it out there, showed her the messages, told her I knew about her and Mark, and asked her why she did it. I kept my voice steady, but inside I was boiling with rage and heartbreak. She looked at me with that same bitchy expression she always had when she was angry or annoyed. Her lips curled into that sneering smile. "Oh, come on, Jason," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. Mark is just a friend. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You're so damn paranoid." I was stunned. How could she dismiss it so easily? I showed her the messages again, and she just shrugged like it was nothing. "We exchanged contacts," she said dismissively. "It doesn't mean anything. You're being overly sensitive. Maybe I just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I mean, it's not like I slept with him or anything. You're just blowing this out of proportion." That's when I saw her lie for what it was, a lie. She was trying to minimize it, brush it off as if it was just some innocent mistake. But I knew better, I knew what I saw. I was furious, but I also felt this deep, aching sadness. How could she be so callous? How could she lie to my face like that? I pushed her harder, wanting her to admit the truth, and finally she snapped. Fine, she snapped back. Yes, I hooked up with Mark. We did more than just exchange contacts. We met up after the show. Big deal, I swear, Jason, it's just sex. It doesn't mean I love him or want to leave you, it's just sex, okay? It's not like I ever wanted to ruin what we have. Her voice was bitter, full of sarcasm. She acted like I was the crazy one for caring so much. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was justifying cheating as if she was ordering takeout. She didn't even try to deny it anymore. She admitted to everything with this bitchy, annoyed attitude, like I was the one being unreasonable. That moment shattered whatever was left of my trust. I felt this wave of rage and despair crashing over me all at once. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I held back. I just stared at her, feeling like I didn't even recognize the woman I'd married. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept going back to her words, her betrayal, the fact that she didn't even care enough to lie convincingly anymore. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. The one person I trusted most in this world had just thrown everything away with some stupid, meaningless sex. And the worst part, she made it. Seemed like I was overreacting, like I was the crazy one. I started questioning everything. Our years together, my own judgment, whether I even knew her at all. The pain was almost physical. I didn't know how I was going to get past this, but I knew I had to somehow. The next few days were a blur of anger, confusion, and a kind of numbness I couldn't shake. I couldn't believe she just admitted everything so casually, like it was nothing. And the way she dismissed my feelings, acting like I was overreacting, made it worse. I kept replaying her words, her tone, her bitchy smirk. It all felt surreal, like how did I miss all the signs? How did I not see how little she cared? I started to realize that confronting her wasn't going to fix this. She was already lying, already dismissing what she'd done. Maybe I had to think about what I wanted next, about whether this was something I could forgive or if I was just fooling myself. I didn't want to lose her, but I also couldn't keep pretending I didn't know she'd been cheating. It was like looking at a mirror and seeing someone else. Staring back, someone I didn't recognize. One afternoon, I decided to dig a little deeper. I couldn't just take her word for it. Her apology, or whatever she called it, was clearly insincere. So I went back to the venue. I wanted to see if I could find anything else that could give me a clearer picture. I talked to some of the crew, asked about her behavior, and surprisingly, they confirmed she'd been acting weird for a while now. She'd been hanging around Mark more than she admitted, and even some of the crew saw her sneaking away with him after the show. That's when I made a decision. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd change. I needed proof. I knew I'd regret it, but I started sneaking around, watching her phone, checking her social media, anything that could tell me more. I found out that she'd been messaging Mark even before the show. It wasn't just a one-time thing. She'd been planning it, maybe even fantasizing about it for weeks. The betrayal cut even deeper. And then came the worst part. I found out she'd been lying about how far it went. She told me it was just sex, that she didn't love him. But I discovered they'd met up multiple times, more than she ever admitted. I saw texts where she called him her secret escape, and he called her his little secret. The emotional betrayal hit me harder than I thought possible. I'd always believed in honesty, in loyalty. And now, I realized that everything I thought was real was just a lie. I started to feel the heat of rage again. I wanted to confront her, attack her with everything I had, but I knew I had to be smart. I couldn't blow up everything without a plan. I had to think about what would happen next. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare, pretending I didn't know. I had to decide whether to fight for us or let her go. But one thing was clear, I was never going to see her the same way again. This betrayal had stripped away everything I thought was true. The moment I realized how deep it all went, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall. I couldn't believe she'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer. All the signs I ignored, all her weird behavior, her dismissive attitude, those were just the tip of the iceberg. She'd been secretly screwing around with Mark during our big band gigs, exchanging dirty texts behind my back, planning meetups like it was some twisted game to her. I kept asking myself how I missed all of it. How did I let her get away with this? Honestly, I was angry at myself for trusting her so blindly. But mostly, I was furious at her for treating me like I was an idiot. The way she lied so easily, her bitchy tone when I confronted her like I was the crazy one. It was clear she didn't give a shit about my feelings. She just wanted her little secret life, her thrill of sneaking around. That night I stayed up, obsessively scrolling through her messages, trying to figure out how to handle it. I knew I couldn't keep this bottled up. I had to do something. I couldn't keep living in this lie. But what? Confront her again, or just walk away? I was so torn, so full of conflicting emotions. My mind kept jumping from wanting to punish her to just wanting to disappear. Myself. Then I remembered the camera footage from the venue. I had heard rumors about the backstage cameras capturing everything, and I decided to check. I wasn't hopeful, but I had to see if there was some evidence that could tell me the truth. Days later, I finally got my hands on the footage, and what I saw made my stomach turn. There they were, Emily and Mark, caught in the equipment room, pressed against each other. You could clearly see her hand on his chest, and in one shot they were kissing. It was undeniable. She was cheating on me right there in front of everyone, and she knew she was being recorded. Seeing that footage, I felt this rush of betrayal that almost made me sick. How could she be so brazen, so cold? All I wanted was to confront her and demand answers, but now I had the proof I needed. I had everything on video, proof she was unfaithful, that she'd been lying to my face, that she didn't care about what I thought anymore. The next day, I decided I'd show her the footage. I wanted her to see how deep she'd gone. I figured maybe then she'd finally get it, maybe she'd realize what she'd lost. When I confronted her with the video, she went full bitch mode. Her eyes narrowed and she spat. "You're just jealous. You think I can't have a life outside your boring ass. Mark's just a friend and that's all it ever was. You're overreacting as usual." She dismissed the footage like it meant nothing. Like I was crazy to think she'd do something so stupid. That's when I realized she was never going to take responsibility. She was going to keep lying, keep pretending she was the victim. I couldn't keep going down this path. I felt a storm of emotions, anger, humiliation, heartbreak, swirling inside me. I'd always believed in us in our marriage, but now I saw everything clearly. She didn't see me as her partner anymore. She saw me as someone she could keep deceiving, someone she could take advantage of. I knew then that I couldn't keep pretending this was just a mistake. It was a betrayal of everything I thought we had. After showing her the footage, I expected some kind of reaction. Maybe tears, maybe anger, maybe even a confession. But Emily just looked at me with that bitchy smirk like I was the one overreacting again. She crossed her arms and said, "So what? It's just sex. You're making a bigger deal out of it than it is. Mark's not even that special. Honestly, I don't even know why you're upset." Her words cut through me like a knife. It was like she was trying to make me feel guilty for catching her cheating, as if I'd somehow overreacted. I felt the rage boiling over. How could she be so cold? How could she just brush everything off like it was nothing? I was shaking, barely able to keep my voice steady. I told her I couldn't do this anymore, that I was done pretending she hadn't betrayed me in the worst way possible. I told her she had two choices. Either she leave and never come back, or I'd do it myself. I wanted her out of my life because I couldn't stomach the idea of her sneaking around behind my back anymore. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk and said, "Fine. If you want to be a martyr, go ahead, but you're just overreacting. You're insecure. I don't love Mark or whatever. I just needed some excitement, that's all. You're the one who's boring. Maybe if you weren't so fucking controlling, I wouldn't have needed to cheat, but I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want, Jason." That was the moment I realized she was completely incapable of taking responsibility. She wasn't sorry. She didn't care that she'd broken everything we had built. She just wanted to maintain her little game, her little lie. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. I couldn't believe I'd been married to someone so bitchy, so selfish, so reckless. Her words only confirmed what I'd suspected. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone who only cared about herself. I started packing. I didn't want to stay under the same roof anymore, not with a woman who could lie so casually, cheat so blatantly, and dismiss everything I felt. I told her I was leaving, that I'd file for divorce, and that she could do whatever the hell she wanted. As I gathered my things, I looked at her one last time. She was still smirking, like she thought this was all some joke. But for me, it was the end of everything I believed. That night, I went to a friend's place, feeling like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I kept asking myself how I let it get this far, how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. But more than that, I felt this strange mixture of relief and heartbreak. Relief because I finally saw her for what she was, and heartbreak because I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. I knew I had to move on, but I also knew this betrayal would stay with me for a long, long time. In the days that followed, everything felt like a haze. I was a ghost walking around my own life, trying to piece together what had happened and how I'd let it get so out of control. I won't lie, deep down I still felt this gnawing pain, this ache of betrayal that wouldn't go away. The woman I once loved, the woman I trusted with everything, had turned into someone I barely recognized. Cheating, lying, dismissing my feelings like they were nothing. It shattered me in ways I didn't think possible. I stayed at a friend's place for a while, trying to figure out what was next. The hardest part was accepting that I had no control over her anymore, that she was who she was and I couldn't change that. I started to realize that I had to focus on myself, healing, rebuilding my confidence and figuring out what I truly wanted. That meant cutting ties, deleting her from my life, and refusing to be a victim of her selfishness. Looking back, I've learned some tough lessons. Trust is fragile and it can shatter in an instant. I learned that some people lie so convincingly that you start to doubt everything, even your own instincts. I also learned that revenge isn't the answer, at least not in the way I initially wanted. I won't say I'm over her, but I am stronger. I've become more aware of what I deserve and what I won't tolerate anymore. To anyone else out there dealing with betrayal, especially someone who's been cheated on, my advice is this: don't ignore the signs. Don't let things slide because you're afraid of losing someone. Confront honestly, and if the truth hurts, so be it. Better to face it head on than live with the constant doubt and pain. And most importantly, remember that you're worth more than someone who cheats, lies, or treats you like trash. Respect yourself enough to walk away if that's what it takes. I'm still healing, still trying to trust again, but I know now that I'm stronger than I thought. I won't let her betrayal define me, but I won't forget it either. It's a hard lesson, but one I needed to learn, about love, trust, and the importance of standing up for myself. That's all I can say. Life moves on, and so will